everybody. Welcome to another IATEFL live chat. I'm joined in the studio by Michelle Schirpa.
Schirpa, yes, Schirpa.
Okay. Michelle, it's lovely to see you. Hello, welcome.
Thank you so much, Nikki, for having me.
You're more than welcome, Michelle. How are you enjoying IATEFL so far?
It was a breath of fresh air to be here in person again after all this. So yes, it was lovely.
And where have you come from today?
Well, I arrived from Singapore. That's where I'm based now.
That's quite the journey.
Yes. Last time I went to IATEFL, actually I was in Switzerland, much closer. But yeah, it was a long journey, but well worth it.
So Michelle, for anyone who doesn't know you at home, can you tell us about your journey in ELT? Where did you come from and how did you get where you are today?
Sure. I'm originally from Brazil. That's where I studied English from a very early age. I started teaching at around 17. And I was in Brazil until I was 24. I did my teacher training there. I did my ISELT there. And then I moved to Switzerland, where I was based for 6 years. In Brazil, I had a lot of young learners, a lot of teenagers. That was mainly the focus. But when I moved to Switzerland, there was a shift. Then I became a business English teacher or an ESP teacher. Now I'm in Singapore and I'm back to general and a few young learners again. So it's nice to have the little ones around me again.
And do you have a specialism? Is there an area that you're particularly interested in ELT?
I must say I like general English. Mm-hmm. I enjoy taking the person on that journey, of discovering the language, of, discovering all the things that you can do with that language nowadays, and just mainly giving an English as a lingua franca focus to all those students right now. It's very fulfilling.
And in Singapore, is it EFL or ESL that you're teaching?
It's ESL because the first language of the country is English, mm-hmm. right? One of them. We have 4 official languages. However, there are many people that speak other languages. There are 4 other languages. So actually, I'm going to say that it's a mix. Mm-hmm. We have a few students that come from China to study with us, and they actually don't use a lot of English outside of the classroom because they can communicate in Mandarin with other people on the street. So in that sense, it would be an EFL, but it could also be ESL because if they want to communicate in English, they can. So I'm going to say it's a mix of both.
Okay. So you have quite a varied background.
Yes.
Which makes for a good career, definitely.
Yes.
And so what brings you to IATEFL specifically?
Well, this time I came to talk a little bit about my research. Mm-hmm. I finished my master's degree with the University of Birmingham in last year in 2021. And then the research became this book. Which I self-published this year. And so I came to talk about the research of influence of performed discursive identities in ELT.
Okay, so was it the Applied Linguistics in TESOL Masters?
It was the TESOL Masters, yes.
Okay. So let's talk, and the presentation that you gave was on performed identities in
yes.
ELT. Certainly, this was a question that I had. Can you tell us what does it mean? What are performed identities?
Sure. So there are many perspectives of identity throughout history. One, which would be the most, at least the most known, is that it is innate, right? So identity is who I am, mm-hmm. what I perform, or what I enact, how I act, how I behave, and that would be something inflexible, just something that I am, and I was born with it, and I will die with it. And that notion has changed over time, and a more modern approach is that identity is actually very fluid and it's co-constructed. So it is mine, but it's not just mine, because it depends on my context. It depends on the social, historical, factors around me, and is co-constructed through discourse. So it depends on how I act, what I say, how I behave, and also how the people around me act and what the people around me talk about and what they say about me and what I say about myself. And if I accept all of those ideas or if I reject them. So our identities are ever changing and ever, it's fluid. It's not something written in stone. And that happens in the classroom as well. And it's very interesting to see how students place themselves, how they place the teacher, how the teacher places themselves, and how the teacher places the students as the class is going on. And that is what the book is about.
Okay. So I'm starting to get some idea of what's meant by identity. Is it purely discourse or is it beliefs as well that form identity?
But that's the thing, right? So where do beliefs come from? It comes from discourse. It comes from what you've lived and how you've seen people act, and what you've seen people do and what you've seen people say, right? That's where beliefs come from. They come from discourse. So if identity is belief, definitely it is part of that, but that also stems from discourse.
Okay. And our identities, we enter with a certain identity, but the identity is fluid and it changes in reaction to the students?
In reaction to everything. It could react even to the environment that we're in. So we might act and differently if we enter a classroom that is teachers fronted, or if it's like a circle, we might feel differently about that. And as we feel differently, we act differently, and we might say different things. We might look for different words to use. And depending on how we behave, people perceive us in a different way. So then our identities might change and shift in that way as well. So it depends also on space that we are in.
Have you got any specific examples that you could give to perhaps clarify even further what you mean by this?
Sure. So I observed two different classrooms. One was a Zoom classroom and the other was a physical classroom, a face-to-face. And the fact that the students in the face-to-face classroom, they could enact with their whole bodies, I guess, gave that group more room for the identities to be more clear, because they could see each other in full. And so in that group specifically, the teacher was, the roles were very specific. The teacher was the power was centered in him. And the students did not reject that placement. On the contrary, they gave them more power. They would say things like, teacher, tell us what to do. What do we have to do next? And so on and so forth. However, that was half of the group. The other half was quite defiant and was not willing to follow what the teacher was proposing, but then defiance can only happen if there is a central figure, isn't it? It's hard to be a rebel when there is nothing to rebel against. Yeah. So the teacher entering that room, stating that identity of, I am the power in this classroom. I hold all of the decisions. This is my lesson plan. There is no change. You cannot do anything with it. Sparked two different reactions, and students split into two groups. One that performed the identity of the subordinate. Okay, I accept this and I will do whatever you tell us to do. And another half rejected it and said, I'm not here for it. I want the power too. And there was quite a bit of conflict in that room because of that.
So what happened? Did the teacher shift his identity or their identity from being the dominant source or influence in the classroom to be more submissive?
In this class in particular, this teacher did not, and the conflict escalated to a point where it was almost violent between this teacher and one particular student. However, in the other class, there was a shift. In the other class, the teacher, prior to entering the classroom, she had told me in an interview, I asked her what your ideologies were, what methodology do you follow, what the perfect classroom would be, and what teacher do you aim to be. And then she was like, I really like the student-centeredness, and I like to be really flexible with my lesson plan. I like them to co-create the lesson with me, and so on and so forth. And that's what happened in the first 5 minutes. So she entered the class with that placement. She positioned herself as the mediator. She positioned herself as the facilitator, but the students rejected that. The students did not follow that. They immediately placed her as the leader. They immediately placed her as the knowledgeable, the one to follow. And the interesting thing is that she did not reject that placement. So it shifted. So a class that started very open-ended, right? And very flexible, quickly became a very traditional PPP with her in the center, with the teacher in the center. And there was even a moment where a student tried to, co-create something and make a suggestion, and she rejected it because she had already taken that placement. She accepted the role of the center, and then she didn't let go. So that was a shift.
So I have a question. What is the difference? Is there a difference between role and identity?
I guess yes, because identity is the umbrella, right? The identity is everything. It encompasses the discourse, the behavior, the beliefs, and the many roles, the many hats, right, that we have. We, just like that film, Inside Out, we don't have one feeling at a time. Feelings can mix, and I guess roles can mix as well. You can be at the same time a mom and a teacher. You can be at the same time a student and whatever. So I guess we can have more than one role. We can perform more than one role at a time, but that is part of the identity that we are performing at that moment.
Okay. And Michelle, tell us about your presentation.
Sure.
What was the message for the audience?
I guess the overall message, if you don't mind, I can read a quote from the book. The overall message is that to be or not to be is not the question, but the constant performance in ELT classrooms. An ongoing improvised co-construction of discourse, which takes the lesson and the teaching practice where the collective enacts them. That's it. So it is the class. It's not about the plan. It's not about the method. It's not about rapport. It's discourse. It's that group, that particular group, and what happens in that classroom. And then we can just, when we are aware of that, we can choose what to do with it. We can choose either to let it go and see where discourse takes us. It might take us places that we haven't planned for, we haven't even imagined, and that could be really cool. Which is kind of in sync with like a dogme theory. But if you believe that you have to stir this discourse into the lesson plan again, either because you have, we work in institutions, we have syllabi to follow and everything. If you see that discourse is taking the class elsewhere, if you're aware of it, you can try to stir it back, right? So awareness here of what is happening there is the key.
So yes, being flexible and listening to what the learners need and want.
Definitely, definitely.
That's a sound message.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon to have a chat. One final question. IATEFL Belfast, if you could describe it in 3 words, what would you say?
3 words. Oh my God. Let's see. It was memorable and heartwarming and Titanic.
Very good, absolutely, very good way of finishing. Hang on, just before we go, if people wanted to read more about identity,
Yes.
this is
To Be, the Influence Performed Discursive Identities in ALT, and it's available on Amazon.com.
okay.